Hey guys, good morning. If you're listening on Facebook Live, this is the Addiction Doctor, Dr. Rob Kelly. We're along with Jennifer Lovely. This is Breaking Through Addiction every Wednesday, over 70 platforms, and Phoenix Radio, along with Facebook Live as we do it. Good morning again, Jen. How are we doing?
Good morning. It's been lovely spending the morning with you. It's kind of
I
fun.
know, isn't it awesome? We should do more of this. Usually it's just one and off. So by the time we go into that routine, it's time to go and do something else. So yeah, so awesome. So Molly Haines, this is going to be awesome because I know Molly and I'm going to let her tell you all about it. But we are kind of good friends now. Yeah, the journey is incredible. So I'm looking forward to having her on.
Awesome. I'm excited to meet her and get to know a little bit about her story and where she came from and where she is today.
Yeah, it will be a good story. Guys, before we begin, Living Recovery Interventions is one of our sponsors. Recovery begins today. Recovery begins together. Give the gift of recovery. We know Travis is a good friend of ours. We're talking a guy who went from a Xanax seizure to a car crash at 120 miles an hour. If your loved one is in trouble, call Travis on 801-573-4188 or visit his website, livingrecoveryinterventions.com. And remember, guys, recovery begins today. Recovery begins together. 801-573-4188. If you're a therapist out there, if you're a psychotherapist, psychologist, or psychiatrist, and you want to get one of your ads onto us, there is a stringent test. Let me warn you before you apply that you have to be doing this for the right reason. We don't take on people that are just after the money. And if we don't like you, don't come on. End of story. What do you say, Jen?
I agree. That your heart's got to be into this work.
Yeah, definitely. We have our own recovered from a hopeless state of mind and body is where we are. And we're not coming off that. So, guys, stick around. Molly Haines is on the show after this quick commercial break. Hey, good morning, guys, to our Facebook Live listeners. Good evening tonight when it goes out on all the podcasts. This is Dr. Rob, the Addiction Doctor, along with Jennifer Lovely. This is Breaking Through Addiction, and this is Molly Haines. Good morning, Molly.
Hi, so good to see you. It's so great to see Rob in the zone. That's how I'm used to seeing him, and it brings me back to the old days of, early recovery.
Those were awesome days, weren't they?
Maybe not for me, but a lot progressed since then.
Looking back, though, it was all good in the end, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Jen, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah. So what was that like for you?
I mean, so my recovery journey has been a progressive journey and really one in humbling, coming to terms with acceptance overall. And I think that acceptance is really what unlocked the door to freedom. And I had just a really difficult time in putting that label of alcoholism, addiction, might even have a problem on me. And so the longer I refused to let that stick, the more and more that built, and, that insanity and the insidious drinking ensued. And it wasn't until, that complete surrender of powerlessness came true for me that I was unable to lock the door for the cure. And that is really where it all has started and progressed.
Wow.
And your journey has been amazing. Your journey really has. Tell us some about your background. Tell me where you grew up and how you got into drugs and alcohol and how it all was at an early age for you.
Yeah, I'm so used to sharing about the solution. This is very uncomfortable for me, but I'm wanting to dive in. So here it goes. I grew up in Arizona. Also, we moved around a couple times. So Las Vegas, and then ultimately when I was a junior in high school, we moved to Southern California. And I was a very high achiever. I had my eyes set on college, on what was next. I was so driven. And so when you ask about drugs and alcohol, I never took a sip of alcohol until I was 18 years old. And so I think that's so important for a couple of reasons. One, once I got into the rooms of AA and everyone talked about, oh, I started drinking at 9 or 13 or smoking, it really differentiated me where I was like, oh, then I'm not as bad as everybody else. And then as I've come forward into, really the solution and the program and recovery, I've realized, that's what this disease does, is it tells you don't have a disease. The alcoholism, that it doesn't matter what point in life you take a drink, it really centered in me. And now I'm able to look back that before I even took that first sip of alcohol, and I remember it vividly, it was after a winter formal dance my senior year. I had a fear of alcohol because I think I knew what the consequences were after seeing it play out in my family and knowing, oh, this uncle has an addiction problem, but not really knowing what that meant for me. And so then going off into college, I really was unleashed, and I really didn't know that the blackout drinking, the incredible shame I felt afterwards, and continuing to complete those or have those things occur over and over, I didn't have names for what those feelings were. And I didn't have names for, oh, this is a solution or this is any different than anybody else.
Wow. I moved around as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so I moved to Arizona, Southern California, lived all over Washington, lived all over the place. And, you don't really realize the effect that has on you.
Mm-hmm.
You jump from place to place to place, and how that feeling of, standing back, looking out into groups of people going, are they going to accept me? Are they going to love me? Am I going to be okay? Affects us,
Mm-hmm.
So how did that, if you can go back, was that like a point of trauma? Was that a point where the drinking became the thing to sort of numb those feelings of inadequacy or whatever those feelings were?
Yeah, it's interesting because I asked Rob this question last week. I said, will I ever feel like I really fit in? Because so if I go way back, I think by having accolades and awards, and when I moved, my solution was jump in, see if I can be class president, see if I can, when I make the cheerleading squad and I feel accomplished in achieving that, I'm good enough and I'm getting that worthiness and praise, but it was never coming from inside. So it was always where I feel like I fit in because I have the awards, achievements, or I might feel like popular by having a friend group, but I always felt like I was on the outside. And it continued when I went to college, post-college, when I would have a job, and I never really realized that I was not alone in that. And so when I look at it and think about it as trauma and going through this process, I always hate to identify my own trauma as trauma, but I'll say it for anybody else. But yes, it can be identified as that, because in being an adult and in recovery now, I'm still grappling with that, of feeling a lot more secure in my sense of self, but wondering, will I ever feel like I truly fit in? Or is that really going to be, I'm going to learn to be my own best friend and fit in that way?
What I like about the journey as well is, well, for me anyway, I didn't know I was fitting as a kid, and I know that's a trait of alcoholism, but I also know that somebody put that there in my head, whether it'll be to a high achiever or whether it'll be just like we grew up in poverty, it doesn't make any difference. But it's also the way I don't really fit in today has brought me to where I am today, has brought me to that self-made millionaire, has brought me to that helping, if not hundreds of thousands, millions over the years, because we all pass it on with all the shows I did, the national shows I do. It's a great feeling. So for me, not to fit in is quite the norm now. I like that. I do like it. I kind of put a spin on that rather than feel negative about it. So we often say on this show that if you don't feel good enough, if you don't feel as if you can achieve, and if you don't feel you fit in anywhere, we want to apologize to you, because somebody put that there. So, Molly, who put that there?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I don't think it was put there by my parents. I think it was stepping aside. I think I was built up so much. And I talk about when going through addiction and recovery of always feeling either one up or one down. I think I was built up so much. I always felt better then. And then when I realized I had a struggle with drinking and alcohol and that whole, demoralizing process of hiding it, that I was a failure and a fraud and none of the things I really thought to be true were true. So it was this whole internal vicious cycle of I'm not good enough because of X, Y, and Z, or I'm not living up to the expectations of my high achieving parents and what was set out for me to do. And I'm derailing that whole plan. So I think it was, I observed a lot growing up. I observed those things. So I internalized I might not be good enough.
That's fascinating. So is that true?
Oh gosh, it's a daily work in progress. So I will say I've come a long way, but it's true I'm good enough, but it comes from telling myself I'm good enough in the mirror, and it comes from believing it. Even if I don't believe it, I tell myself anyway, and putting it into practice.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me
I don't know. Oh, go ahead, Rob.
Tell me about, before we get into the solution, because I know that it's about the solution for us. Tell me about the last day, week, month, whatever it is, when you decided finally that this was enough, that began your permanent recovery.
So when I think about all of the times that I had tried to get sober, and it was really waving the white flag of, I know I have a problem, but I really don't know what this means. I know it's alcohol, but I don't know anything else to do other than keep drinking. And I felt so uncomfortable. Anytime I was in rehab, I felt like it was the biggest failure of my whole life. I was disappointing my family. And again, that's the story I tell myself rather than what they might have been thinking of, she's helping herself. I didn't tell my friends. I mean, I had so much shame around the addiction that it kept me in a place of, it was impossible to recover if I felt so ashamed about the addiction. And so when you ask about the last week, the last month, it was, I knew I could never drink again, but I didn't know how. And so I would sit in AA meetings and, I was in the chair, but I was very disconnected in how I was different than everybody else. And I went out to try to manage my drinking a little bit better. And, I'd done that a couple times and it's progressively worse. And it was not until I ended up in a hospital room after a 7-day bender where I almost died. And I knew I almost died as through no result of trying to control it myself. I knew I didn't want to die. And I was completely alone. I had been stripped of my clothes, my belongings, the things that I thought mattered so much to me. And I remember they would convene the people from the medical side of the hospital facility and the psychiatric side. And there was some pride about it where I came from the medical side. And I looked around and was asking people how they ended up there. And most people had tried to end their lives. And I was thinking, well, I didn't do that. I'm just here because of my drinking. And I looked down and realized I was in the same hospital gown as everybody else. And I might not have been trying to end my life, but on the outside, it appeared that way. And that was my lowest point in my addiction, knowing that if I don't want to live and take the action steps to live, I'm going to die. And in that hospital room, I called a nurse and asked her to call AA because I knew that was going to be my solution. I didn't know what was next. And shortly after that, I began working with Dr. Rob.
That's amazing. That's a beautiful, amazing story. And what I love about that is that the moment that you realize we are all in the same robes. Mm-hmm. Right? We're all dressed the same. And one of the things that I'm a big proponent of is that my story may be different than yours, Molly, in that I may not have been a blackout drunk or whatever, right? But mm-hmm. The truth is that I still felt as shitty as you.
Mm-hmm.
I still, like, your blackout drunk is me going sleeping promiscuously with whoever, however, right? It's like, it's the same disease, manifests differently. And I love, because so much of our being recovered is that, like, we put on our pants the same way. We go to the bathroom the same way. There is no difference. And I feel like in our society, and even in some recovered places, like, you're better if you're in AA than you are if you're in NA. You're better if you're in AA than you are in SLA, right? Or whatever the story is. And the truth is it's not. We've got the same thing. We have the same thing. So how has that progressed? Like, how are you recovered today? What does your life look like now that you know we all wear the same gown?
Yeah, and I didn't realize it at the time, but it was like what the book talks about in recovery, of walking through that archway to freedom. And there was such a parallel story in the chapter about working with others, where two men go from going to the hospital, and the man who was a chronic drinker and thought he was completely hopeless emerges as a free man. And it wasn't until I dove into the book and realized, oh my gosh, like, I am just like all of these alcoholics and the stories I've been listening to that I was trying so hard to separate myself from. And there was a big freedom in that when I made that decision that I am an alcoholic, I truly accept that I'm an alcoholic, and it's going to be okay. That's where life began to open up for me. And it was a very slow process, as Rob knows. And Rob gets in, fights with the disease, and he was adamant about fighting with my defiance, my unwillingness at times. But when I progressed in my recovery, what life looks like now is I have this amazing perspective on exactly what you said, of we're all being the same. AA for me in recovery has been the great equalizer, in that I've been blessed to have been able to, at the time didn't appreciate it, but experience some of the best treatment centers in the world. And I've been in meetings and places with people who have been to prison, who have been homeless. And so I've seen how the stories are the same. I'm the same. I belong there. And it's been that humility, that gratitude, and that continued action is what has me thoroughly convinced that if I continue to practice these principles, show up for my life and show up for my recovery, I will continue to grow. My life will continue to grow and expand. And it's really not about the addiction and the alcohol. It was about what was underneath way before that 18 years before, where I never even picked up, but I had all of those behaviors.
That's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Guys, this is Breaking Through Addiction. My name is Dr. Rob, the Addiction Doctor, along with Jennifer Lovery. Our guest is Molly Haines today. If you're still recovering from life, from alcohol, from drugs, from depression, from bipolar, whatever it may be, and you want to be recovered, you need to listen to our sponsor, Recovery Coaching. Hey guys, welcome back. Big shout out to the guys on Facebook. Thanks for joining us, guys. I can see the numbers are getting higher and higher. I'm glad you decided to join us today. Recovery Morning with Breaking Through Addiction. My name's Dr. Rob, and with Jennifer Lovely. Molly Haines is our guest today. We're going to get into the solution now, Molly. We're going to get into the transformation from a hopeless state of mind and body to living a life which must be beyond your wildest dreams, because I know where you've been and I know where you are now. So tell us what recovery's given you today.
Yeah, I think it's important to go back to when I took my last drink and where I was at in that hospital room. My family didn't want to speak to me. I was spending the last several holidays alone. And so what's grown from that is I was putting in place a life raft and tools for me, and it wasn't for anybody else. And so through a result of that, the hardest thing I struggled with was patience. But through that patience and persistence and showing up, I've been given really a relationship with my family. And I, as the oldest child, want to be a role model for my younger sisters and brother, and show them how to walk this path with dignity and grace, no matter, if it's alcohol that you're reaching for, or food, or, relationships, what that looks like in recovery, because I think we all struggle, as Jennifer said, in reaching for things, and it's very similar. And so my life has opened up in that way so much. And it sounds trivial, but when I first got sober, I mean, people talk about you get the stuff back. I mean, I didn't have a car, and there were things that I had prided myself on being able to afford, but I had stripped those things away. And so slowly getting those things back, not because whether I could afford them or not, but because I earned them. So those were the first things that started. And then being able to show up on time places, being able to keep my word and commitments. And so life has just grown since then with those simple things first.
Yeah. And one of the things, like one of my, the things that I love about working with humans is, and my big passions in life is two things you said was having grace. I mean, reclaiming our grace, really, really owning our grace. And then the other thing is that walking in our integrity, and whatever that integrity is for ourselves, right? Mm-hmm. So what do relationships look like for you? What did you not have before that you have today?
There's a couple. I think my biggest achievement is having in family relationships. It was by walking this path first. My family has started doing the work themselves, and it's individually, but I have witnessed, and it's through their hard work, but definitely through me knocking on that door and encouraging those uncomfortable conversations, that the addiction wasn't centered in me. It was through the family. So I've watched our family dynamic and our family relationships grow tremendously. I've seen it in my parents' marriage through a willingness to have an understanding of, the dysfunction that was caused as in childhood, and how they can do better and how they can grow with us as adult children now. And with my, brother and sister, my sister didn't speak to me for the first year, and waiting through that amends process, being able to have the courage to admit and acknowledge where I had hurt people, and not be so attached to what comes on the other end, because it was about me going forward and taking steps forward to make my life right by, with me and my higher power. And it didn't matter what would come. And, this was something that Rob was such a stickler on, because he assured me that these relationships would come back if I continued to do the next right thing. And they did. The last thing I'll say about dating relationships, I think the biggest accomplishment I've had with that is I've had the courage to say no and walk away from relationships that are no longer serving me. And that is really difficult, because the idea of sitting with myself sometimes, when we all want that companionship and connection, and have especially now in the world where, that loneliness is at an all-time high, feeling comfortable and confident enough to know that this isn't serving me, this person isn't the best for me, and not only putting my finger out at them and what are they not doing right, but looking inward of how can I move forward in the next relationship, and what can I do better.
I love that. Absolutely love that. And them relationships are really hard to come to terms with. And yes or no is a full enough answer. Mm-hmm. I know that I kept telling you, I don't know whether you remember. Of course you do. You remember.
I know you're going to say. You're going to say it's a business decision.
It's a business decision. That, yes, of course, that was awesome. And there won't be a man enough, good enough for you to date by the time I finish. And these are the things that happen. And these are the things that the difference between recovering from an illness and recovered from an illness, like food poisoning, like the common cold, like alcoholism, is takes you there to that next level. Because if alcohol and drugs are not the problem, then what is? Well, it's me. It's my internal dialogue. It's what I tell myself on a daily basis. And we often say, and we have done this morning, that I wouldn't speak to anybody like I speak to myself. Mm-hmm. And when we start realizing that and putting ourselves first, so, when I drop a pen on the floor, I'm not a stupid idiot, because my brain will take that on board and it'll start believing that. especially if it keeps happening. So I try and take it to the next level is, addiction and alcoholism is not an affliction. It's a superpower. And we are absolutely capable of anything in the world. Once you put the alcohol down, have the psychic change, spiritual awakening, therefore DNA change. So we're not the same person, because the book says the same person will drink again. We don't want to be that person. So we can take it to another level. What about you? What about professional life? How's it been with have you got a job back? I know you got the guy, the family, the car, everything that comes back. What was the jobs like?
Yeah, so I'm back working in publishing, which is where I worked previously before I, went through my recovery process. And so I do think, I'm a big believer in God and God's timing, and there is no accident. So I look back and thought, this is interesting that I end back up in the same type of career path, and God led me here. And looking at how I, got the job entirely sober and in recovery. I'm not manipulating. I'm not dishonest on a daily basis. And if I am, I'm able to check myself and admit when I'm wrong. And then working in, sales or a high pressure environment, Dr. Rob, you talk about in recovery, we can go back to any job. It doesn't matter, I don't want to hold myself back. And so putting myself back in that same environment and seeing how I'm able to show up and operate in the world and manage complex relationships and not cower back or be, fearful of what are they thinking about me? What am I doing wrong all the time? I mean, there's such a peace with that. I get overwhelmed sometimes emotionally how different it is and how I even survived prior.
It's like we say when people come to us that I've never had a job or been employed for a long time, we go, hey, you need to get a job at Starbucks, or you need to get a job sweeping the floor. But when we get professional women through, it's like, well, should I go back to work in Starbucks? Fuck no. Mm-hmm. Is that what you did before? No. What did you do before? Or as a head of a sales team? Well, can we not start with that again? And that's what Molly did. She jumped straight in of being in charge of people and getting our, getting it out there and just putting that personality out there. Absolute genius to watch. Genius.
I wasn't sure we could say fuck, so I was like trying so hard.
I know. That's what I read on Instagram the other day. As the end of it. Well, it's true. And I'm like, really? You tell me now at the end of the interview that I can curse? That's part of my deal, Yeah, awesome. Jen, sorry.
No, you're fine. Well, I love that. I mean, I know Dr. Rob has many, many success stories, but I love that you are on here sharing your story of hope, strength, and your experience. But also, like, one of the things that I love is, our secrets keep us sick. My son called me the other day. He goes, Mom, I just need to tell somebody this. And I said, what? And he goes, I threw somebody's mail out that used to live here, months and months and months ago. And he goes, but I just had to tell you that I did that. He goes, because I know that those secrets are what keep me sick. So I'm just sharing it. And what I hear is, like, now that you're starting, that's the power of this work. And that was the power of me understanding that I could begin to share my story. And it's in sharing the story that allows us to not be sick with our own psyche, right? Mm-hmm. So what do you want to leave our listeners with in hope, in your story, and life? What do you want? What do you want them to know?
Yeah, I mean, this is a great platform to do this. And like I said, I am so passionate about sharing the solution and not diving back into my drinking, because we all know, whether you're in recovery or not, people know someone who is struggling, and right now more than ever. But it is what you said, Jennifer. It's the telling someone, talking to someone, making that first step, which is the hardest. Dr. Rob knows, in working with him, I called him several times before I was willing to commit. And what I can say through my journey of recovery is it all goes back to, how do I get out of myself and making it about others? And the opposite of despair is action. It's a daily action. It's daily work. And if you're not ready, you're not ready. And people, I think, sometimes shrink it when I say that, but I had to be completely ready. And it's very simple. When I talk about my recovery, it's really two things. I completely have conceded to my innermost self that I'm an alcoholic. And two, I have a full knowledge of my condition, exactly what will happen if I ever were to pick up a drink again. And then following up with that, I have thoroughly worked a program and continue to work a program that helps me show up for my own life that is now about others.
Yeah.
And that daily reprieve, state of execution keeps us on our toes, which I took something from today's interview that I'm going to keep and use. I think we all wear the same gown.
Yeah.
I love that. If you've got a mental injury, but don't call it mental illness, a mental injury, if you're suffering from addiction, bipolar, blah, 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 and you all end up in the same ward, you're all wearing the same gown. And anybody can recover. And always, guys, you must remember it's just a business decision.
Mm-hmm.
I love that you remembered that. Oh,
hey,
listen, where can people get hold of you?
Yeah, so I would love to give out my phone number and email address, whatever works best, but please contact me for if you need help or assistance or coaching or just to be led in the right direction. It's 949-309-1391.
And I've got the email across the bottom of the screen, guys, if you want to, especially around Nashville. That's where Molly lives, if you don't mind me saying. So recovery coaching over there. I know you do a little work for us, or will do, but this is something. I mean, we don't really advertise anybody else, Jen, for work in the area. But I think Molly's. I always said when I met Molly was that. I mean, it was funny because she rang once and then she went missing for a bit, and then she rang again and she was drunk, and then she went missing for a bit. And I kept saying,
I was determined.
Yeah, you was. Yeah.
Determined to drink, not to get sober at the time.
Yeah, but I kept saying to my wife, she's going to come around. And I think it's when my wife wasn't sure about what we do. But we kept saying she'll come around, and sure enough, she did. And what an amazing journey. But the reason why I told you that, guys, is Molly is one of them girls that she's going to be the next generation of what I do. And I always say that, even now it's time to pass the torch on, that when I finally give up this business, the likes of Molly are going to come along and blast it in the next 10, 20 years when, I'm still rocking in my chair, still trying to speak to Jennifer on the radio show going, it's going to be okay now. It's going to be good. So the email's there at the bottom of the screen. I want to say thank you so much, Molly, for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure, as I thought it would be. It's been a pleasure working with you. And
I've learned from the best.
Oh, no, stop it. I'm going to start blushing now.
He's so full of it. He does not blush. But you know what I want to say, like just for fun and just cause, but I love how when people come on and they share their war stories, if they will, and it's always like, oh, I was blackout drunk and I did this thing, and I always think to myself, I'm like, but I did that shit and I wasn't drunk at all. Like that's what makes me sicker than all of you. Anyway, what were you? Molly?
I was just going to say, I try to steer away from it because it's like, we all know what we did. And, if I can get into an hour-long conversation with it, we'll probably find some commonalities. But really what we, when I stopped focusing on the problem went away. Yes. And so let's talk about what we have in common today, which is recovery and the solution.
Where are these cool sayings coming from? When I concentrate on when I didn't concentrate on the problem went away. I love that. I'm going to write that down. I'm on CW33 in about 25 minutes, guys. If you hear me say this, it's do I have to say that?
It might be Rob, might be me. Who knows these days?
I doubt it. I can't with so much crap, I don't know.
It was so amazing to talk to you, and so nice to meet you, and nice to meet one of our cohorts in Tennessee. You have that little accent, Tennessee. And it was lovely. It was really, really lovely meeting you and just chatting with you. And just want to say congratulations. I'm so happy for your life.
Thank you. Yeah, it does keep getting better and better. And, it's staying the course for sure.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks, Molly. Guys, stick around. We're going to finish the show, but we'll be right back after this. Welcome back, guys. If you just joined the show, we're just finishing Breaking Through Addiction on every Wednesday. We're going to start doing Facebook Live, but today it's been a Facebook Marathon Live. It's been an awesome show, and I really enjoyed it. I told you she was going to be good. She's awesome.
I know. She's so great. I enjoyed just spending time with her and listening to her stories. Powerful, powerful woman. Lovely.
Yeah, she is. Yeah.
And, it seems like she would be a really great Rob Kelly.
Yeah, definitely. I always said that from the first. We went through some battles with the disease when I screamed and shouted, because that's what I do. But she stood there and she took it and she learned and she moved on, and it wasn't all plain sailing, because it isn't, but she was there and she didn't give in. Yeah. And she's always one of my girls that I go, hey, can you give us some success stories? I always go to Molly and go, hey, listen, you need to, I never tell her the name, but I say, you need to listen to this story. I'm going to tell you about this client that we had. And it's always inspiring, it's always inspiring. And even today, I use the family as a reference, saying, hey, somebody wants, and I'd use Molly for a reference, of course, but that's how good it was. It was amazing. So good show.
It was really, really good. As one of our clients said to me the other day, Jen, you're ridiculous, from the Urban Dictionary ridiculous, but she's ridiculous.
I know. Awesome. Awesome. Ridiculous. Guys, Breaking Through Addiction every Wednesday. We're going to be live on Facebook and obviously platforms at the nighttime. But listen, we've got a couple of announcements to make, guys. There's a possibility we're taking this to AM radio. So we're going to get out to more people. I hope hundreds of thousands of people. So watch this space. We're going to look at that this week and see if we can take it to the next level, because we'll be syndicated before next year's out. We'll be on there every single week doing our stuff. So guys, thank you so much for joining us. Before we go, I want to tell you about Live and Recovery Interventions. You know who we're talking about. Give them a call. I'm telling you, Recovery Interventions. Call Travis 801-573-4188. Such an amazing guy. So for me, guys, I've got a hard stop. CW33 on their podcast live in about 5 minutes, and uploaded to their news radio thing. Sorry, TV news tonight. You'll see me on there looking all good and prim and proper. But for now, guys, I want to say thank you so much for joining us this morning. It's been an absolute great 3 hours we spent with you, and we will see you next week.
Yes. Great to see you guys. It's been a fun Monday marathon with you, and we'll see you soon.
Bye, guys.
Bye.